has found out that her entire future role in the monarchy has been completely decided without her. And honestly, the way it happened is so much more brutal than anyone in the public even realizes yet. We're not talking about a gradual shift in responsibilities or some slow transition over the next decade. William and Catherine sat down, looked at the actual structure of the family going forward, and essentially wrote Camilla out of anything that matters. And the wildest part isn't even that they did it, it's that Charles knew about it for months and never told her. Like, imagine being married to the king, thinking you finally secured your place after decades of fighting for it, only to find out your husband already signed off on a plan that sidelines you completely and just didn't mention it. That's where this story starts getting really interesting. Before we get into all of it, make sure you're subscribed to Crown Watch so you don't miss any updates on this situation. The whole thing kicked off because William wanted to establish something permanent for Princess Charlotte's future role, a real position with actual responsibilities, not just some ceremonial title she'd trot out for photo opportunities. He wanted her designated as the official royal guardian of the crown, which means she'd have the legal standing to support George, stand in for him during emergencies, carry charity work on his behalf, and essentially function as his right hand the same way Anne has functioned for Charles. That's not a small thing to hand a young girl. That's real power, the kind that requires training, private briefings, and actual constitutional weight behind it. And William wasn't asking permission. He had already worked this out with Charles months before any of it became public. The only signature missing was his own as Charlotte's father and as the next king. So when Camilla finally found out what was happening, she didn't just object, she completely lost it behind closed doors. What were they thinking, handing such power to a little girl? That's apparently what she spat at her own staff, demanding to know how any of this had been allowed to happen without her knowledge. She stormed through her private rooms and declared that William and his family had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. And look, I get why Camilla would be upset about not being consulted. Anyone would be. But when you actually look at what she was saying versus why she was saying it, the whole thing falls apart. She tried to frame this as concern for Charlotte being too young, concern for Anne and Edward and Sophie being disrespected, concern for the public being confused, but none of those arguments hold up when you examine them for more than 5 seconds. Let's start with the Anne argument because it's the most transparent. Camilla argued that giving Charlotte this kind of title, jumping straight past the normal path everyone else had to walk, would look like a slap in the face to Anne, Edward, and Sophie. 3 royals who had spent decades earning every duty they carried for Charles I, slow step at a time, with no shortcuts and no title handed to them early. How would it look, she asked, if a child skipped that whole line entirely and landed at the front before she'd even grown up? On the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? Protecting the hierarchy, respecting seniority, except Camilla and Anne have never gotten along. Not once. Not in public and not behind closed doors. Anne has never curtsied to Camilla. Not at a single event, not in a single hallway, not even in private. Camilla knew that. Everyone in that family knew that. So when Camilla suddenly started acting like she was deeply concerned about Anne's feelings being hurt, it didn't track. Anne's name was just a shield, something respectable to hide behind while she fought for something far more personal. And honestly, the fact that she thought nobody would notice that is almost insulting to everyone watching. Then there's the argument about Charlotte being too young. Camilla asked William directly if Charlotte was even old enough to carry something this heavy. And that's the moment she stopped pretending this was about Charlotte at all. She said it straight to his face. This whole thing was Catherine's doing. A mother grabbing power and calling it duty so nobody could call it selfish, because at the end of the day, it wouldn't really be Charlotte holding that power. It would be Catherine pulling every string from behind her daughter's back, hiding behind a child's name while she called the real shots herself. Now, William's face went cold instantly. He got in close, voice low and hard, and told her to never talk about his wife like that again. Not ever. And I think that reaction tells you everything you need to know about how far over the line Camilla stepped. William is usually pretty controlled in these family disputes. He's learned from decades of watching his father avoid confrontation. But the moment Camilla accused Catherine of manipulating the succession for personal power, he dropped any pretense of diplomacy. He wasn't negotiating anymore. He was drawing a boundary and making it clear there would be consequences for crossing it. What Camilla didn't expect was what came next, After she finished her rant about Catherine supposedly orchestrating all of this, William just looked at her and said that Charles had already privately agreed to this months ago. Then he let that sit for a second. Then he leaned in with a small smile and said it was funny that Charles never told her, made her wonder why. Maybe he already knew exactly how she'd react. Maybe he simply didn't trust her with it at all. That's the kind of comment that doesn't just sting in the moment. It festers. Because now Camilla isn't just dealing with William and Catherine making decisions without her, she's dealing with the realization that her own husband, the man she spent decades fighting to be with, deliberately kept her in the dark about something this significant. And if he kept her in the dark about this, what else hasn't he told her? Camilla went completely silent when she heard that. Then William picked up the folder, stood and walked out, leaving her standing there with nothing left to throw at him. But she wasn't finished. She decided to go around William entirely and requested a private audience with Charles, still convinced she could soften this, delay this, maybe even kill it altogether. And that's exactly when everything blew wide open. Before Charles had even finished reading both versions of the plan side by side, part of the succession proposal leaked straight to a royal reporter. The story that hit the headlines framed Charlotte as a child being handed power above royals who had earned theirs the hard way. The exact kind of public fury Camilla had warned about just hours earlier. William's office had to scramble fast to contain the damage before it shaped public opinion, and worse, before Charles had even made his final call. When they traced the leak back, it led straight to someone inside Camilla's own staff. She denied knowing a single thing about it. But here's what she never explained. Why did that leaked story match her private complaints almost word for word? Like, if that's true, then this makes no sense. Either someone on her staff somehow independently arrived at the exact same argument she'd been making behind closed doors, or someone fed that reporter exactly what Camilla wanted the public to hear. The timeline doesn't add up any other way. With the leak already causing chaos, Camilla marched straight to Charles and tried a new angle entirely. She argued that a role carrying this much power, the right to act for George during a national emergency, couldn't just be settled quietly inside a family. She wanted it dragged into formal government review. Think about that for a second. She was willing to pull the entire monarchy into public political fire just to stop one girl from getting a title. That's not protecting tradition. That's trying to create such a massive constitutional headache that everyone gives up and drops the whole thing. Charles shut her down immediately. He made it clear William had already made his decision and he wasn't going to overrule it. But to understand why William was fighting this hard, you have to go back about 6 months to the afternoon that started all of this. It happened at the Commonwealth Youth Service, a huge royal event held at St. George's Hall, packed with young people from across the Commonwealth. George was set to give his very first formal speech that day. William was meant to stand right beside him. Charlotte and Louis were just meant to sit nearby and watch. Nothing more. Minutes before George was called forward, he overheard something he was never meant to hear. Two officials talking low, using words like concerning, words like not the first time this month. And just like that, George's whole world tilted. This wasn't nerves about forgetting a few lines anymore. He suddenly believed someone he loved might be seriously ill, that nobody was telling him the truth, and that he was about to walk out on that stage while everything behind the scenes was quietly falling apart. Then, without a word, William immediately left the hall. He didn't even glance at George on his way out, just a flash of pure worry crossing his face before he disappeared through his side door with an aide. Nobody told the family what was happening. It would take months before whispers started making their way around the palace that William had been rushed off to take an urgent call, that someone close to him, maybe Charles, maybe even Catherine, had suddenly fallen unwell that very same afternoon. But in that moment, standing in that hall, nobody knew a thing. All they knew was that William had vanished, and George was now standing there completely alone. The program couldn't wait. Guests were already seated. Officials were whispering behind their hands, and George, a boy who hadn't even given his first formal speech yet, had to pull himself together and walk out there with no father beside him and the weight of whatever he'd just overheard pressing down on his shoulders. That moment changed something in William. He realized that the family had built this entire future around George becoming king someday, but had given him almost no structural support for when things went wrong. If William had been incapacitated that day, if something had happened to both him and Catherine, George would have been completely isolated with no sibling legally empowered to stand beside him. Charlotte would have been standing there with no official role, no ability to help, just watching her brother carry everything alone. So William started working on this plan to make sure that never happened again. That's where the whole royal guardian concept came from. It wasn't about grabbing power. It was about making sure the future king had someone who could actually help him when things fell apart. Camilla didn't know any of this when she was fighting against it. She just saw a title being handed to a child and interpreted it through her own experience of having to fight for every scrap of respect she ever got in that family. And she told William exactly that. She said she had spent decades in this family fighting for every scrap of respect she ever got. Nobody handed her anything. She earned every single bit of power she now held, one slow year at a time. And now here was a child, barely old enough to understand what real power even meant, being handed all of it in one afternoon. William caught it instantly. This was never really about Charlotte being too young, or about Anne, or about tradition at all. This was about Camilla herself and how much it hurt her to watch a child get given in one signature what took her a lifetime to build. And I think there's something genuinely sad in that. Even if you don't particularly like Camilla, she's not wrong that she fought for decades to get where she is. The public hated her for years. The press eviscerated her. She was compared to Diana constantly and never once won that comparison in the public's eyes. She endured all of that because she loved Charles and believed that eventually the family and the public would accept her. And now she's watching Catherine walk into that same spotlight and get instantly, effortlessly, everything Camilla fought years for. The public adores Catherine. They call for her by name at events. Organizers request her specifically. Camilla never got that, not once. So when she asked Catherine directly if any part of her felt guilty for that, she was asking a real question, even if it came from a place of pain rather than fairness. Catherine's answer was calm and final. She said the public compared Camilla to Diana for years, and Camilla never once won that fight. Not one single time. And that's exactly why none of this surprised her. Then Camilla pushed even further. She asked if the crown had ever actually wanted her, Camilla standing at the center of everything in the first place. Catherine didn't hesitate. She said no. The crown wanted Charles. Camilla was only ever chosen by him, not by the family, not by the public, not by the institution she gave her whole life trying to belong to. She was only ever tolerated because one man loved her. And that is brutal, because it's true. The institution didn't choose Camilla. Charles chose Camilla. The family accepted her because they had to. The public tolerated her because there wasn't another option. But nobody ever wanted her there. And now that Charles is older and the family is looking toward the next generation, that tolerance is evaporating. There's no longer a reason to keep her at the center of things when the center has already shifted to William and Catherine. The meeting where all of this came to a head is honestly fascinating because you can see every single tension in that family play out in real time. Anne was there. She had known about the plan all along and admitted it plainly when Camilla asked her directly. Camilla reminded Anne in front of everyone at that table that in all the years she had been part of this family, Anne had never once curtsied to her. Not one single time. She said it out loud now because she wanted everyone in that room to understand exactly what this moment really was. This wasn't just about schedules and duties. This was Anne finally getting to act on something she had felt for years and never had the excuse to say. Anne's response was absolutely ice cold. She asked Camilla if that was really the best she had or if she had anything stronger. Then she said the family had a responsibility to plan properly for the next 20, 30 years, and that future belonged to William and Catherine, not to sentiment. Then she added the part that cut deepest. She reminded Camilla of her age and said plainly that realistically she would not be part of most of those coming years. That answer hurt more than if Anne had simply lied to her, because it wasn't an insult. It was just a fact stated without any attempt to soften it. Anne wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just refusing to pretend that the future of the monarchy should be built around someone who wouldn't be there for most of it. The meeting ended abruptly. Camilla got up and walked out. Later that evening, she found herself alone with Charles for the first time all day and poured out her heart. She asked him whether he had ever truly believed she belonged at the center of this family, or whether he had only needed her there until he didn't anymore. Charles didn't answer straight away. He looked at her for a long moment, searching for some version of the truth that wouldn't destroy her. He couldn't find one. He told her quietly that he had loved her, but that was never going to make the public love her too. Camilla felt something in her chest give way completely. She asked him barely above a whisper to take it back. He said nothing at all. He simply sat there and let the silence answer for him. A week later, another meeting got called, and this one was different from the second everyone sat down. A senior advisor walked in holding a second document way thicker than the folder from before. This one covered everything big going forward. Coronation anniversaries, Commonwealth events, state banquets, every single major moment the family would need someone to lead if Charles ever had to step back further. Camilla reached for it right away. The advisor pulled it back before she could even touch it. Not signed yet. William had already reviewed it. Catherine had already agreed to it. The only signature missing was everyone got sent out so Charles could sit with it alone. He didn't even touch it at first. He just sat there thinking about 3 different reasons people had already thrown at him. William kept saying the family needed to get ready early instead of waiting until there was an actual problem. Catherine had already shown him with her own 2 hands that she could handle the work without a single mistake. And then there was Camilla, years of loyalty, years of history, and his own promise that his time as king wasn't just going to be some short wait before William swooped in and took it all. William walked back in first and didn't waste a second. He told Charles straight up they couldn't afford to wait anymore. State visits and Commonwealth relationships needed certainty right now, not months down the line. He reminded Charles again that crowds already responded to Catherine everywhere she went, that organizers were already calling and asking for her by name. Charles looked up and asked him point blank if popularity was really what should decide something this huge. William didn't back down for 1 second. He said no, but ignoring what the public already wanted would only blow up in their faces later. Camilla walked in before Charles could even answer that. She reminded him one more time that cutting her out would make him look temporary, like his entire reign only existed to warm the seat until William was ready. William's whole face changed. He told her flat out this had nothing to do with applause. This was about making sure the family survived for decades, and refusing to plan now would only leave everything wide open.
ये डबल पॉल क्लॉथ हैंगिंग स्टैंड कोई आम स्टैंड नहीं है. इसकी आप वेट बेयरिंग जरा कैपेसिटी चेक करें.
Later. Charles had heard enough. He sent everyone out except Anne, and Anne didn't sugarcoat a single word. She told him straight, this decision had to be his, only his. Not William's, not Catherine's, not Camilla's. She warned him if he signed just because his son pushed him into it, resentment would follow him for years. And if he refused just to protect his wife, the uncertainty hanging over everything would only get worse. Charles sat with that for a long moment. Then he picked the document back up. He read Camilla's name printed right there on the page, read it twice. Then he grabbed the pen and crossed it out himself. One clean stroke, no hesitation, no second thoughts. He dictated new wording to the advisor standing right beside him. No mention of Camilla anywhere in it, just one line. William and Catherine would take over public duties whenever the king needed support. He signed it before the advisor even finished writing it down. That evening, the palace released the update. And honestly, it barely made a ripple compared to what happened exactly 1 week later. It happened at a public reception, a small event. Catherine walked in first, and the room changed instantly. Heads turned. Conversation stopped halfway through. People started moving toward her before she'd even taken a few steps inside. Evening, the palace released the update. And honestly, it barely made a ripple compared to what happened exactly 1 week later. It happened at a public reception, a small event. Catherine walked in first, and the room changed instantly. Heads turned. Conversation stopped halfway through. People started moving toward her before she'd even taken a few steps inside. Charity leaders wanted photos. Diplomats waited patiently just to steal 30 seconds of her time. Everyone wanted a handshake. Everyone wanted a moment. Wherever Catherine went, the crowd followed. Then Camilla stepped forward to greet a group near the entrance. And this was brutal. She got a few polite smiles, a couple of quick handshakes. Then it was over. Nobody asked for a photograph. Nobody waited their turn to speak to her. Within seconds, people were already drifting away straight back to Catherine. It was like Camilla had never walked into the room at all. Everyone noticed. You could almost feel people pretending not to look while looking anyway, because this wasn't just an awkward moment. It wasn't one bad event. Right there in front of everybody, the room had quietly answered a question the family had been trying not to ask. Who does the public actually want? And the answer couldn't have been clearer. For a monarchy that survives because people choose to support it, that reaction wasn't embarrassing. It was a warning the crowd had already chosen its future. The family was simply catching up. William watched the whole thing from across the room. He didn't need anyone to explain what had just happened. After the event, he found Camilla and told her something that landed even harder than the silence she'd just experienced. What happened in that room wasn't new. It had been true for years. The only difference was this was the first time she'd been standing there to see it with her own eyes. That's the thing about being tolerated rather than wanted. You can go years without realizing it because everyone is polite and the cameras are flashing and the titles are still in place. But eventually there's a moment where the politeness drops and the reality becomes impossible to ignore. Camilla just lived through that moment in front of an entire room full of people. Later that night, Charles found her alone. He tried pulling apart the public side of their family from what they actually meant to each other privately, insisting titles and schedules had nothing to do with their marriage. Camilla wasn't buying it for a second. She hadn't spent decades clawing her way to the center of this family just to be told the center didn't matter anymore. He reminded her she was still queen, and this is the line that changed everything between them. A title can sit on paper long after the real power behind it is already gone. You can keep the crown sitting on your head, but if nobody's listening to you anymore, if nobody's asking for you anymore, that title means absolutely nothing. Charles gave her nothing back. No comeback, no defense, just silence. And that silence was louder than anything he could have said. The very next morning, one small detail confirmed none of this was temporary anymore. A briefing about upcoming Commonwealth events went out. William's office got it first. Catherine's people got copied in right after. Camilla's team got it last, almost as an afterthought. Small detail, right? But everyone inside that palace understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't one bad week anymore. This was simply how things work now, every single day going forward. The information flow had shifted permanently. The power structure had been rewritten. And Camilla, who had spent decades positioning herself at the center of everything, was now on the outside of the loop entirely. Publicly, Camilla gave them nothing. She smiled when she had to smile. She said nothing critical to a single reporter. But the royal family knew her calm in public wasn't a defeat. It was the beginning of something the rest of that family had absolutely no idea was already coming for them. Because here's what nobody seems to be talking about. Camilla didn't get to where she is by giving up when things got hard. She spent 30 years being the most hated woman in Britain and still married the future king. She endured public scorn, press harassment, and a family that never fully accepted her. She outlasted all of it. So the idea that she's just going to quietly fade into the background now because William and Catherine have the public's affection, that doesn't match anything we know about how Camilla operates. She's planning something, she's just smart enough not to do it in public where everyone can see it coming. The difference now is that William and Catherine know exactly who they're dealing with. They've seen her tactics. They've watched her navigate this family for years. And they just made a move that fundamentally changes the board she's playing on. They didn't just take away her duties. They took away the one thing she always counted on, which was Charles's willingness to protect her position. He signed the document. He crossed out her name himself. Whatever comes next, Camilla can't count on the king to save her anymore. And for someone who built her entire position on the fact that one man loved her enough to fight for her, that's not just a political loss, that's a personal one. And those are the ones that cut deepest.